He's crazy like Jack Bauer. His name is Forrest Power. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, YouTube. Ever since watching The Running Man back in the 1990s, I've always wondered about the way in which society would evolve as time went by. We've seen projections of the future in so many different film and TV series. We had Minority Report with the idea that if you committed a crime in the future, you could get held accountable before it happened. We had Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone existing in a society that did not believe in violence. We also had Back to the Future, but after diving into Squid Game over the last few weeks, my interest into this sort of thing has been piqued once again. If you aren't one of the 4.6 million people to watch Squid Game over the past month, the premise is a pretty simple one in its essence. Rich guys bet on which humans will survive a battle royale-esque game in the same way that guys all over the globe currently bet on horses every day. It sounds a little bit far-fetched at first, at least that's what my mum said when I told her about it, but when you consider the path that humanity has walked over the past 50 years, you start to wonder a little bit. Cinema has become increasingly more violent in its portrayal of things, and therefore more human beings are being exposed to brutality from a young age. I actually found it quite alarming that the first Squid Game article I came across on the internet was one coming from a school in the UK, and it discussed how many of their younger pupils had watched the show and were traumatised by the graphic nature of it, and they were therefore warning parents about the dangers of allowing their kids to watch this show. The article then went on to talk about some of the kids in their school doing some pretty brutal stuff in imitation. Don't get me wrong, they weren't gutting each other and pulling out machine guns, but the old adage of monkey see, monkey do seems to fit here. If humanity is exposed to increasingly more and more violence as the years go by, it seems likely to me that violent crime will rise as a result. Now, I do have to stress that I don't want to turn this video into one of those arguments we've all seen before, whereby I blame TV and video games for nurturing the future psychopaths of tomorrow. But that is just point one on my list here about how society is becoming more and more extreme. Part two, though, comes from the world of sport. During the last 20 years, we've seen the rise of the UFC. Mixed martial arts is seen as a blood sport by so many people around the globe, and for a long time it sought to glorify gratuitous violence, heavy metal music, images of guys covered in a mask of claret, and an emphasis on human beings being chained up inside a cage seem like something you would see from one of those aforementioned 80s movies predicting the future. Are we going to continue to become more extreme when it comes to our sporting choices? I'm not criticising the sport of mixed martial arts for its brutality too. I am a product of these same problems and issues, but even the most ardent MMA fan would surely admit that the prospect of soccer kicks and knees to the head of a downed opponent are a step up in terms of brutality from the sweet science of boxing, which dominated combat sports for so long. So yeah guys, that's point one and point two. If the cinematic diet that we are feeding our younger generation continues to become more extreme and more brutal, and also the sports that we engage with and watch become increasingly more brutal, then surely it would make sense for society as a whole to follow suit. The counter-argument, of course, to all this comes when you look to the left wing. The levels of tolerance for anything these days seems to have tumbled through the floor. There are a lot of people out there in the world right now doing their best to eradicate brutality in a number of forms. The age of misogyny in developed countries is dead. Gender within Hollywood has become such a hot topic these days that you can't scroll past a trailer on YouTube without noticing the amount of likes or dislikes, and that's usually attributed to whether the film has some kind of gender agenda attached to it. And if you want further proof of that, go and look at the trailer for the female Ghostbusters film and simply look at the amount of dislikes that are present on that video. It actually received a record number of dislikes at the time. I think that this leftist movement is a bit of a pushback for everything that's happening within society, but it can't stop it. People are becoming more and more extreme in what they do every day. And that boils down to the fact that we want to see crazy things out there on the internet. We want people to produce crazy, zany content so that we consume it readily at our fingertips. We've normalised things like crazy eating challenges. People eat to the point where their stomach is ready to explode, film it, and try to become famous overnight. Similarly, OnlyFans. 5 years ago, it was considered an extreme way of making money, borderline prostitution to most people, but now, even the sweet girl in her 20s from down the road has turned her hand to it, and it's almost become normalised and will continue to go that way more and more with each passing week and each passing month. Is this a criticism of that sort of behaviour? Not really. Who am I to judge someone else's life? I'm just merely pointing out that the world is becoming more and more extreme by the day. If I brought one of my relatives back from 100 years ago, I think they would be genuinely shocked to their core about how society has become more extreme. I guess normalised behaviour is in the eye of the beholder though. What's normal to my 150-year-old dead relative isn't normal to me, and what's normal to me isn't normal to a 16-year-old kid now. The world continues to spin, change and evolve, and trying to stop this motion would be like King Canute trying to hold back the tide. There is no fix on this front. Something that has become more increasingly obvious to me as the years pass by is that we can't change the world, though, as sad as that might seem. We can only look after our own lives, and I think people should just look to lead a life that's normal for themselves and not worry about the bigger picture. You don't have to do something extreme in the name of hoping that you will become an internet celebrity overnight. I don't want to limit the scope of this topic though, guys, to just being about people doing crazy things on an online platform. I think that generally, as a whole, society is becoming more extreme in terms of what the masses consider normalised behaviour. But maybe this is just a me thing though. Maybe it's just me sat here on my gaming chair thinking to myself that society is becoming more extreme, and I'm the only guy alive that thinks in this way. The beauty of broadcasting your views on a platform like YouTube though is that you can ask other people what they think. So, ladies and gentlemen, I pose the question to you. Do you think that society is becoming more extreme? Will society continue to become more and more extreme, or will there eventually be some kind of pushback? Let me know in the comment section below, as audience participation is what I want the most on this channel. We've all been put on this planet to have an opinion on stuff, so let's try and share it, guys. As always, thank you very much for watching this video and putting up with me. I've had a crazy busy schedule schedule at work over the past 2 weeks, so it's just nice to get back in front of the microphone doing what I enjoy doing the most. As always, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Forrest Power, and this has definitely been emotional.